Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. We have a very special episode today. Like Soham, let's say, what do you think about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, entrepreneurship sounds like very exciting thing. At the same time, I think it's a lot of pain points are there as well. But with the advent of Shark Tank and other TV series, I got to know a lot of things about startup. Getting the funding and the exciting journey, right? Developing a product, but it looks very exciting to me. But at the same time, I'm a little bit scared on what it takes to be an entrepreneur, right? So I think it's a challenging journey and at the same time an exciting one too, but like very difficult one from what I feel.
Absolutely. It should be, it looks like challenging to me as well, like to get a secure funding, to run the business, right? And to get clients. So you have to do a lot of things all together at the same time. But what if I tell you, I know somebody who has not only started his own company, but that also in a non English speaking country. He did his master's from a non English speaking country, master's in civil and environmental engineering, and then went to another country to fund his own company, to run his own company. But that is also a non English speaking. So, how difficult do you think that would be if you
Pretty
kind of
challenging
rate
for
it?
yeah, pretty challenging for sure, because I remember when I was thinking about pursuing a master's, I always thought of going into an English speaking country because learning a new language always was something I thought would be something very difficult. I like, even though in my undergrad I started learning Spanish, and I kind of understood how difficult it is to learn and be fluent in a foreign language. So for me, I always avoided going into a country which was not an English speaking one. So I can imagine how difficult that could be and how challenging that could be to not only study in that country but actually understand the laws and start start their own company. So a pretty exciting journey, it seems, right?
Exactly. So today we will welcome Sagnik Bhattacharjee, who is a co-founder of a company called ECOTEN. He went to Czech Republic to start this business, and he did his masters from France, right? And so this entire thing, we will know his entire journey, how his entrepreneurial journey. It took him the first 3 years to land his first client. Within this time, he was developing his business, like researching on the product, fine tuning the product. And guess what? After 3 years, the first client that he landed is city of Vienna, which is known as the best livable city on the planet. So that is quite exciting. And after that, followed by two prestigious fundings, and now they are a profitable run engineering firm. So I think we have got to learn a lot from this person, from Sagnik especially. He was also our batchmate and undergrad, so we are very proud of him. So, Shom, what do you think? Shall we welcome him out now?
I think Sagnik is one of the the best person to talk about entrepreneurship, because not only he founded a civil engineering company in a non-English speaking country, but he also managed to get it to a profitable stage, which is pretty rare in a lot of startups nowadays, right? So yeah, it would be great to learn about his exciting journey. So let's welcome Shagnik to this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shagnik, for joining us today. We are really excited to learn how you started a consulting company in a foreign country, civil, and it turns out to be a profitable engineering business. So we will learn all about that today. Thank you so much for giving us time on a Sunday afternoon. So for our viewers, can you tell a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so, well, my background is, well, I studied civil engineering with both of you in IIES Shipur, and after that, I did my master's in France in a school called École Centrale de Nantes, and it's in a place called Nantes in France, which is in the Atlantic coast. And I studied my master's in the science and techniques of urban environment. So basically, it's a course where you have all the science and the engineering side of environmental engineering combined with urban planning and urban designing and even urbanism altogether.
Hmm.
So it's a very specialized field on that. And yeah, after graduating, I moved from France to the Czech Republic, where I started ECOTEN Urban Comfort, and now I'm the one of the founding members of the company, and I work as a CTO, the Chief Technology Officer of the company. And and we've been working on this in ECOTEN Urban Comfort for the last 5 years. So yeah, that's in general my background.
Great.
Wow, that is a great journey. So let's go back a little bit, Sagnik. And so we know that your father was a diplomat working for the Ministry of External Affairs for the government of India, right? And you have lived in many countries in your childhood, right? So if you can, describe some of those experiences, living in like various countries abroad and the countries you stayed in, the languages, just a little bit for our viewers, if you can.
Okay, so going back, first of all, I was born in Calcutta, and I don't really remember much of Calcutta at that time because my family moved to New Delhi for almost immediately.
Right.
And then, so as you said yourself, my father works in the Ministry of External Affairs, so he gets transferred to many embassies, Indian embassies around the world, and the entire family goes. So I ended up tagging along as a side luggage. Yeah. So my father's first mission was, we call them missions, by the way. His first mission was in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, and that is where I started my schooling, my kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, and then we came back to New Delhi for after 3 years. Usually these missions last for 3, maybe sometimes even more, depends on situations, but usually 3 years. So after 3 years, we came back to New Delhi for another 3 to 4 years, and then we moved to the United States in Houston, Texas. That was my father's second mission, and we stayed there for another 3 years. So I was usually when we go to these missions, we go to some like diplomat school or international schools, but in the US we went to local school. So I had that experience, and that was my foundation for a lot of things, let's just say, because I was in the, I was around 10, 11, 12 years old. So it's kind of an impressionable year, and then
Right.
comes adolescence. So then after Houston, we came back to India, for New Delhi, for another 1 to 2 years approximately. It's a little bit hazy on that always. And then and basically I did my most of middle school over there. And then I moved to Moscow in Russia for my entire high school. So it was like 4 years actually. We got an extension from 3 years. So that was where I did my 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Basically high school in Moscow, in Russia. And then finally, I decided to do my undergrad in Calcutta. I think basically I've never really lived, as you figured, I never really lived in Calcutta, so I didn't really know what Calcutta was about. It was actually hilarious when people would ask me, okay, so where in India are you from? And I would be like, I'm from Calcutta. Where in Calcutta? And which area, which district? And I'm like, no idea. So I'm like, okay, let's fix that a little bit. And I've heard about the Durga Puja so much. So some of these are small reasons, but then basically I got an admit to IAEST, where I met the two of you, and basically that's where my last introduction starts. So yeah, in general, that would be my entire journey. And as for how it is like, there are a couple of terminologies that I would like to introduce, which are kind of fun. We have a little community called we call ourselves the MEA kids, because we are basically always moving around with our parents, and often are very confused about our backgrounds and our experiences. We get to see a lot in the very beginning of our lives, and that makes a very powerful impression on us. And yeah, so the couple of terminology: MEA kids, Diplo brats. Yeah, that was a popular one. There was an entire page on that. Another thing was some people call us as third culture kids, like people who grew up in cultures that are not their passport culture. So these are many terminologies came out of that. So yeah, it was altogether a really nice global experience. We get to meet a lot of, multiculturalism comes naturally. It's like the air we breathe, so altogether that part is really fun, good experiences. and good foundation as well. The only thing I would say is like maintaining long-term relationships was a little bit tricky, at least for me, because now it must be easier with Facebook and all these social media. But at that time, I remember we had Yahoo Mail, where we tried to keep in touch with my friends in the US, and it didn't work out very well because the internet wasn't also very strong. So yeah, that becomes a bit of a hurdle, and well, you seem to adapt to it, but it becomes really difficult to kind of maintain long-term relationships with people. Everything becomes temporary.
Right.
So you start yearning for like very strong personal relationships. You do have them with your parents, of course, but like with friends, I think that becomes very important. And well, you get used to moving a lot of boxes from one place to another. That's definitely there. But yeah, like that's the only drawback of this kind of lifestyle. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty cool. And just also to add the final fact, I went through different education systems as well, Indian and American mainly, and also some other internationals as well. And that part can be a little tricky, moving from Indian education system to American education system. They have very different academic timelines, and sometimes they really don't work well with each other. Uh, so yeah, that part can also be very tricky. It definitely affects your academic records in that sense. It can, a lot of people somehow manage, but it definitely becomes tricky at some point. So, but yeah, otherwise international experience altogether, really great. So yeah.
No, that was really cool. Like you had, like you at a very young age, you got to see a lot of countries, a lot of different people, cultures. I'm sure you must be knowing multiple languages as well. So, just a quick question. So, how many languages do you know?
Well, actually, I know 4 languages, but I'm going to my fifth and sixth as well.
Okay.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I must actually. So I know Hindi, Bengali, of course, English and French, and I used to know well, a lot better Russian than I know right now, and I would like
You
to kind
was
of
in
pursue
Russia
that.
also, right? If you
Yeah, for
remember.
Yes,
four
yes,
years
in
he said
Moscow, as I
for
said,
high
four
school.
years, yeah.
Oh,
But I didn't really learn much Russian in my school over there because it was an international school, so we didn't get much of a chance. So I did have some friends who used to play around at the playground and stuff, and I used to learn as much as I can from them. So yeah, I mean, I used to know a lot more, now a lot less, and I'm trying to get it back. And now I'm trying to also learn Czech because I am in Prague in the Czech Republic. So yeah,
no,
trying to
that is
trying to cover
really
that up.
cool, I would say, because learning so many languages, meeting different people, so you get to know their
Hmm.
perspectives, right? Because they will express their thoughts through languages, and it's pretty cool when you know the languages. You can get their feelings and thoughts much more
Yeah,
easier.
yeah.
So no,
Yeah.
that was really great part from your side. We got to know. So let's move forward to your IIST days, right?
Yeah.
Like where we all three met in undergrad
Hmm.
college. So
Hmm.
like, how did you choose that college? Like how you choose that college, and like how could you adapt yourself in that situation, because you lived in abroad for so many years.
Hmm. Well, well, first of all, I just want to make a quick mention that Shayanto was the first person I ever spoke with on phone. I still remember I got his contact from my cousin brother, so it's really good to mention that here. As for how I chose it, I didn't really choose much, to be honest. Like all I knew was I wanted to study in India, and I want to study engineering, and also it would be a great bonus for me to study in Calcutta because I've never, like I said, I've never lived there, so I get to know a little bit of my heritage on that as well. So basically, these would be the main factors for choosing that. And now, following up from that, coming to Calcutta I won't say that for the first time. I do come visit every now and then in the middle of whenever I used to go, but. Yeah, actually living there in the city was definitely a very powerful experience. A good amount of cultural shock, to say the least. I wasn't prepared for that because, like in Russia, for example, when we first moved there, we didn't know the language, so that was a big problem for us because Russia works in Russian, as do most European countries. But I thought that okay, I knew Bengali, I was fluent in it, so I thought that the cultural shock probably won't be that much, and I had my extended family members as well. but then living in the campus and finally meeting the young generation directly, our generation in Calcutta was definitely one heck of an experience. Fair to say that I definitely learned a lot more Bengali than I knew before, because there are certain aspects your parents will never teach you,
Right.
and I definitely, after living in the hostel, you get to learn a lot from there, which is, I think, very important. And also getting the local feel of it. It was definitely really good. And then just going around the city, I remember, because I was one of the few people who actually stayed in the hostel like 7 days a week, because everybody else would go home.
Yeah.
That was the main thing. So on the weekends, I would have the place to myself, and usually in the beginning it would be really boring because everybody's gone, and like I had a few friends of mine who also had similar situation as me. So we would just go to Calcutta, like the city center, Esplanade, and all those places, and you really hang around there, like a bunch of lost people in that sense. That was really fun. Like Calcutta is an amazing city altogether, and you just experience so much. Yeah, it has been really experienced, and the whole academic side is very. That was definitely a bit of a challenge for me, because the style of learning in Calcutta is very different from the one I had in Moscow, because first of all, there's so many people. Like
Exactly.
our class had something like 100
100,
students.
yeah.
Even though we divided everything into like 4 sections, they're like 25 each. That was already more than the school I had in Moscow. In Moscow, I had 8 students in my class.
Oh,
So, which is some compared to what you guys would have in a coaching center. Even then, it's very small, right? So that was a huge shock for me. It's like being in that kind of an environment, and the chaos that's out there. It's just amazing, you're just like everybody's going through this very chaotic environment, and somehow everything still works. Is definitely really interesting. Yeah, it was an unforgettable 4 years altogether. I made really powerful friends. But they even those I'm still in touch with, and they're everywhere in the world now. And yeah, altogether it was really cool. I mean, if I may just share one small funny incident, I remember, in the very beginning, before I even came, I think the indicator for my cultural shock was that I was trying to understand how the public transport works in Calcutta. And in most of Europe, I think also in the United States, usually you have to get on a bus, and you have to stand in a bus stand or a very specific designated area.
Yeah.
And and I remember going around with my dad, like, where do I get the bus? I have to ask, like, where do I get the bus? He's like laughing at me. He's like, well, this is Calcutta. You can get the bus literally anywhere you want. You just have to indicate that, I need to get on the bus, and the bus will actually stop. And for me, that was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. Anywhere you go, you don't have to like go to Google and just check, okay, I need to go 5 minutes walk from here, and then I can get the bus. Now I can just stand here and the bus will come. Even the conductors will come down and pick me up if they need to. That kind of hospitality you will never find anywhere. So this is just a starter. I would say an anecdotal session of my entire Calcutta thing, which is just so much fun. And I need not say Durga Puja in Calcutta, there's no equivalence of that anywhere else in the world, no matter how many Bengalis you have, in this place. So yeah, I think that would be pretty much my experience there.
Wow, that's very interesting, Sagnik. Yeah. Different for us too, I like seeing someone with so much of, varied experience. And it was, great, even interacting with you, right? To find the, different cultures that you have been with, different countries that you have lived in. So I think that was a great experience for everybody, studying in our batch, right? So yeah, that's awesome. And I think another thing about the bus is it's always empty, right? Like whether people are hanging around it or you always
Yeah.
you have place, it's always empty. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always empty. I'm like, where is the empty space sometimes? Yeah. But once you get used to that, that's the incredible thing. In the beginning, it definitely took me a while. It's like, okay, I'm never going on a bus like this again,
Right.
But then you get used to it, like compulsion forces you, and you want to enjoy and I was also quite adventurous myself. Like, you know what, let's do it. Let's do how the locals do it. And after some time, you just get used to it. It's just so much fun. I still remember that ride from our campus through the bridge to the city, and
Exactly.
high speed we're going through. It's just amazing. Yeah, good memories every time I go there. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's great memories.
Yeah.
So Sagnik, let's move forward a little bit. And so you decided to pursue your masters, right?
Yeah.
So why did you decide to do so? And how you came to know about your university in France? And did you always wanted to do your masters in Europe, or you didn't have any country specific goals?
No, I actually did not have a lot of like planning when it comes to choosing my master's. I knew I wanted to do it. I wasn't even sure when I wanted to do it.
Hmm.
There was a choice actually. So my my dad, he while I was in Calcutta, in the first few years he was back in New Delhi,
Mm.
and then he moved to his next mission, which was in Muscat in Oman.
Okay.
And that's the Gulf area. That's like where civil engineers work, like in
Right.
construction is booming there and everything. So I thought that okay, it's good to potentially take advantage of that and like having a home base there and actually having some chances to visit there during my college days also really helped me to scout. So I thought that I would actually work there for some time or somewhere nearby in that region, get some valuable experience, and then go for masters. So and I think some of you might already know I was doing a lot of internships every time I went there for holidays, summer, winter. I was doing a lot of internships and I learned a lot over there. But during these internships, I met some of the engineers that were working there and just had a like casual conversation, picking the minds of
Right.
seniors, and they were asking me about like my plans. I'm like, okay, so for now, I'm thinking that I would work here in Muscat, stay with family, and then move to do my masters. At that time I did not know much about Europe or the potentials for doing a master's in Europe, how much it cost, nothing I knew. I knew about the US because it's quite well known,
Yeah.
US, Canada. The English speaking world is well known amongst us. So that was definitely my go-to at that time because I didn't really think too much about it actually. So when I did talk to some of the seniors, they gave me an advice, and I told them that I want to do my master's at some point, and it was definitely going to be in the West. So uh, and they're like, okay, in that case, I suggest that you do your master's immediately after your bachelor. This is the suggestion they gave me, and the reason why they told me that they gave me the suggestion was that once you start working, it's very difficult to basically like go back to being a student, and also you often don't have the time to prepare for your applications so easily as you would before, and
Right.
definitely the academic flow remains. So I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, so that's when I started rethinking my plans. So like maybe I can wait a little bit, but never really went too serious onto it until thanks to some connections we had in our college. This is when I came back from my internships in Muscat. I started going to these centers in Calcutta, like the US Center, Max Muller House,
Right.
and Campus France, British Council, and all that. I started kind of exploring what options are there and going to the atypical um, places because the US is very competitive, and fair to say that my grades weren't the best in that sense. So I didn't think that I would make it there. That was my perception at that time. So I'm like, okay, I'll try some other places where atypical places. For me, like when it comes to that kind of situation where your grades are not that well, you don't really have the luxury of choosing where or rather like you have to do your research anywhere everywhere, so like I'm just looking everywhere for it, and I stumbled upon Campus France, who by the way comes to our college every year to present themselves, but I don't think anybody really attended those sessions as far as I
Yeah,
know.
I didn't remember.
uh, yeah, most of us actually didn't know.
I
I came
also
to know
don't
about
know.
this later. Yeah, it was in our Tech Fest actually. They kept coming. But anyway, so I went to Campus France and I started looking for options there, and turns out that France has quite a lot of options for technical studies as well as business studies as well. It's quite popular for that. It has very good institutes for business, but also for engineering studies as well, which somehow just is not so well known. I
Right.
think when it comes to Europe, we think about Germany directly because already a lot of Indians go
Exactly.
there and everything. And I also had this idea that okay, in most of Europe, based on my experience in Russia, most of Europe would end up speaking in their respective language. So I didn't really think much of living in Europe because of the language thing. So it was more like a education and experience, Schengen area and everything, like all these historic things that you could do in Europe, I thought, okay, that would be a good idea and would be a good experience as well. So Campus France, I reached out to Campus France, and they helped me to pick my subject. I definitely wanted to study something in environmental engineering. It was the one that was most interesting for me. So I went into that, and they gave me the right course, a really good school, and I applied. And to my, actually, I was quite surprised. Like to my surprise, I even got my admit, and that's basically how I chose to do it in France.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No,
Yeah.
great
So a long
journey.
answer to a short question.
No, that's, I mean, people will get more perspective when you actually explain it. So that's a very good answer
Mhm.
that you gave. So actually, for our viewers, Sagnik has agreed to do another podcast with us where he will actually go in detail with how are the options in France, what are the options in France, how you can get a job there, because he actually did his MS in France. But for today's video, we will actually focus on another aspect of his life, which we think is very interesting, like, because France is a non-English speaking country, right? And you did your masters in a non-English speaking country, because we did also masters outside, but we went to a English speaking country, so it was much easier to understand what they're teaching us. So that was a big challenge for you. We can clearly understand that you did your masters in a non-English speaking country. But another thing which actually fascinates us a lot, to me personally, it really, like, it fascinates me that you went to another non-English speaking country, Czech Republic, and you started a business there, an engineering consulting company, right?
Yeah.
And so we would like to know, like, how that the company name is ECOTEN, like how it started, what was the journey, like how it all began. Like you went to this country, and also for our viewers, it's like, I think in 5 or 6 years you are running this business, you
Yeah.
co-founded this business, and it's
Yeah.
a profitable engineering business. So we will go into the details about what happened in the business, but let's start with how you started it.
Okay. I think it's a good continuation to like start from France, as you mentioned, like about studying there and everything. And in France, yeah, it's a non-English speaking country, and also I studied half in English, half in French. So my first year was in English, where I had French courses, and then my third semester was in French, which was definitely very. It was a crazy experience. I mean, right now that's all I'll say, because I know this is not this question wasn't about that, but it's important to mention it because that really it definitely was my plan. Because once you invest in a country, I'm talking about like emotionally as well as like even like physically, like you've made the efforts to learn the language. So you would think that okay, you want to stay there because you want to get the return in investment from your experience.
Right.
So I definitely did not have any plans to go anywhere else when I was in my second year. It was already very hard to do my third semester at that time in French. But in the French education system, you have the option to do an internship at the last semester, it's an internship where you also write your master's thesis and then you defend
Right.
it. And that's part of the course. But this is an important thing. And I wanted to do it in a company because this is usually how you would move to a job, like
Right.
a full-time job. So I wanted to do it in a company, but my course, which I found out after coming to France, was more designed towards research and basically doing PhDs. They have wonderful resources and training for all the aspects of doing PhD. But like they taught all the technical side and the scientific side very rigorously, but they were definitely more inclined to that. So that's what most of my classmates actually went into. They were doing PhDs afterwards. But for me, I was like, okay, I don't mind doing a PhD, but I would prefer to work because I was definitely more inclined uh, to working to getting professional experience. So I was looking at everywhere again, when you have to go do something that everybody else is not doing, you really have to look at and explore all the options. So I remember we got our. But one thing was that our university helped us with getting a lot of these internships. So my university provided this. advertisement for the 6 months internship in at that time I did not know was in the Czech Republic. I didn't look through actually. Everything was I was so used to doing all these interviews in France and in French that like, okay, so I thought it was automatically in France. So in the interview I realized that okay, it's in the Czech Republic. It's another country in, even though it's within the Schengen area, within the EU, it's still another country. So all the documentation comes with that. So I'm like, okay, well, this the company that at that time wasn't really formed. It was ECOTEN. It was doing something completely different at that time. So it was what we call the mother company, the ECOTEN Smart Energy Solutions, which is whose activities are very different from what I'm doing right now, but it was already established. So I spoke with the founder here, and basically we agreed that they would be able to host my internship in the Czech Republic, and I would be able to do my master's thesis there, and I would work with them on that. So I made the decision pretty much at the last moment to move, because it was the only company actually that I managed to get into, and was like, okay, I'll get professional experience. That was what I was looking at. I didn't know so much about, frankly speaking, I didn't know anything about startups. Okay, so I didn't know so much about what it would be like to work in a startup. I was just thinking like everybody else, every other student, I'll get professional experience, and then after that, I can change my options. So that was there, and then I came to Prague in the Czech Republic, and I set myself up here. I did my master's thesis, and then I started really getting the feel of what exactly was happening here, and yeah, that was around that time, towards the end of my internship, the 6 month internship after I defended my master's thesis, is when we decided, okay, we'll start a new company called ECOTEN Urban Comfort, which you can say is a spin-off of what I said earlier, is ECOTEN Smart Energy Solutions, already established.
Right.
And the difference, I will just be very clear right now, is that ECOTEN Smart Energy Solutions is working on more direct civil engineering work and also energy auditing. Right now, what it's doing is energy auditing, and they also design buildings, passive housing, and etc. Whereas ECOTEN Urban Comfort is doing something completely different. It's working with urban planners and urban engineering to, help with climate change, help cities to become resilient to climate change impacts through various technologies. So you can say it's kind of spun out of that domain, and we decided to start that with the initiative as a separate limited liability corporation, and that was around 2018, and yeah, we basically moved forward from there. That's basically how I came to be. I would like say, I think you might get the impression that a lot of things that I do aren't exactly planned, and you would be right. Partially, there was definitely I know that like a lot of things do happen like this, but you have to be open to whatever comes on your way and figure out a way to like take advantage of that. So that's basically what I did, and I guess that's life, so that's just that.
Yeah, that
Very
is
interesting.
awesome. Yeah, and I think you are very right. Like even for us, I think yeah, a lot of things were not planned, and you take things as it comes, right? And as you said, we must be open to opportunities. Otherwise, like once it goes, right? So that's really great to hear about your journey, how you got into the company. And so as we also, that time, I think 4 or 5 years back, even in India, startups were not that well known, right? There were few startups, but nowadays, with the advent of Shark Tank and all those other
Yeah.
TV shows, people have come to know a lot more about startups. But that was great that at that point you managed to get into a startup, and kind of started a new spin-off of the company from the very beginning. So
Mhm.
that's a great experience. So moving a little bit forward into your startup. So you got your first client after 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And so during these 3 years, I presumed you were working on some product development or some software, right? And
Yep.
also making business contacts, trying to land the client, right? So first of all, how did you keep yourself motivated, while looking for your first client? And and of course, a lot of startups, it's hard to see the success initially, but how did you manage to plan that time and spend those time looking for the client?
Yeah, yeah. The first initial years of any startup, I think, is rather difficult. You
Right.
really have to grind a lot for that. But yeah. So for us, we knew that that was going to happen because the way ECOTEN Urban Comfort was formed was based on a very specific simulations technology that we actually obtained from a French research lab where my master's was connected to. So that was kind of my connection. And the idea was to use this technology to produce a lot of data and results and analysis for the benefit of our clients, which our main target client were usually the public sector, being like city municipalities, basically people who make decisions in the cities on climate action plan and stuff like that. And of course, also the private sector who are working related to this. So yeah, with the software that the technology that we brought, we had to first step was to transform that technology into something that that is commercial, at least commercially viable for us, because it was originally designed for research purposes, so it
Right.
can be very different in that sense. So I think the first couple of years in my master's thesis was also related to that, like how to like add modules and simplify the software, the structure of software a little bit. And it took us a while to do that. So at that time, things were like things were gradual in terms of its development, and we knew that it was going to take time. Like building a software, even if it's some modules that are already established, it takes time and a lot of
Right.
patience.
Exactly.
So we didn't expect to get any clients in general. And one good thing for us, I think, in which case we were very lucky, was that we had a solid foundation when it comes to our funding. So we didn't have to like secure any extra funding in the beginning, because the founder already had another company, the ECOTEN Smart Energy Solutions, running, which was running quite well. So
Right.
he was basically bringing the funding from there, and he was the founder of that company. He's still the founder of that company too, so he could do that, And so we were funding ourselves, and we were spending on the research and development activities. So we were working on like trying to connect with universities and scientists and researchers everywhere at the same time, like developing this technology. But then we were like, okay, we would give ourselves a year at best, 2, but no, probably like that was our estimate, like 1 to 2 years at best.
Hmm.
But in third year, that's when pressure started coming in on, okay, like we have the ability to use the software, which is great,
Hmm.
but we're not getting any clients yet, and that's when things get a little bit dodgy. So we were like, okay, now let's go for business development. Let's focus on business development. Up until now, we were mainly focused on the technical side, which is something that from my masters as well as bachelors, we're very well tuned for. Like we know the science, we know how to work with that. But when it comes to business development, it's a whole other universe,
Exactly.
and it's particularly difficult for technical people who like to be very specific. So that's when, like, we started around the third year or so, even like somewhat before as well. We started like, okay, we started getting the shock that, okay, business development, you need to know your clients, you need to understand what is their pain point, and you need to figure out how exactly you would use the technology that you've developed to address the pain points of your clients. This is very, very important. So we started rethinking a lot of our technology as well, and even the method or the product in general, actually, what we would sell. We started rethinking a lot of that as well. And yeah, we like the first 3 years, we definitely, there were a series of failures even when it comes to acquiring and like getting new clients and stuff. We got rejected several times. A lot has to do with, of course, the fact that we were new, and in this field, it's very important that you have like a reputation or credibility, basically, in this field. So building that was very difficult in the beginning. So we definitely had a lot of trouble with that. But then we made like you said, after like around third year itself, we started really pushing forward, and we started, basically the way we did that was that we found a pain point of the city, which was kind of hindering the process of them getting our technology, our services. So we developed a new service to kind of bridge that. So that's when our, as I would mention, the mapping service, what we call the urban heat vulnerability mapping service, would come in. So if I can go a little bit into that.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Like what
okay.
exactly is the product, basically? What is the
Okay,
service?
so yeah, that's so like those. I was just talking about the story, so I'll tell you about the product now. So as I mentioned, the service that we were originally providing, what we were originally developing, was the simulations. So it basically allowed us to take a 3D model of an urban area, and usually on a neighborhood level, and use that as an input for the software, and then give a lot of other information about the weather, coordinates, etc., and then simulate the microclimate in that area to see how exactly the built environment impacts the climate around that, or microclimate around that area. And this is important for the people who are actually in the outdoor areas of that, even living there,
Right.
how exactly they would adjust to that kind of climate. And because now with climate change, as you know, everywhere in the world, India, the US, Europe as well, climate change is impacting, and impacting really in a very bad way.
Exactly.
And the most recent
Yeah.
IPCC reports have also mentioned it as well. They keep mentioning it. And one of the biggest impacts of climate change impact that cities are particularly impacted by is extreme heat events, the heat waves that we're seeing now,
Exactly.
that are increasing in frequency as well as intensity. And cities are the places where they're impacting the most, because that's where most of the people are living today. More than 50% of the world's population is living in cities, and that's projected to increase to over 70% in the upcoming decades. So we're looking at a very urbanized population worldwide. And that's unfortunately where climate change hits most. Why? Because cities are very artificial. They store in a lot of heat energy from the sun, and they don't release it back compared to its surrounding areas. That's where the whole urban heat island concept comes in.
Okay.
So our technology is basically allowing us to design cities, or allowing our users to design the cities in a way that is most resilient to this overheating. So the solution is basically to plant more trees, add more green spaces in that area, green roofs, green walls, even moisture, more like water fountains that we see here in Europe at least, as well as coloring, the albedo effect, the coloring of the outside walls with lighter color so that they reflect off more sunlight, and be basically a combination of these solutions. And our simulation technology allows us to predict what's the best way to design cities in that way. So this was our original work, and it was in the scale of a neighborhood. But what often happened when we reached out, in our initial days, when we reached out to the cities, we discovered that cities were actually, like, they were interested in this product, but they didn't know exactly where to use this technology to, because the city is very big.
Right.
So and there are various different systems in the city. So how do you work with that? Cities make their own master plans. So we realized that we had to come up with some kind of product or service that would work on the city scale instead of the neighborhood scale before we come to the neighborhood scale, which would in fact facilitate the choosing of the area where we would want to simulate. So this is when I started doing my personal experiments while working in the simulations on using GIS technology, geographic informatic systems, and also what we call the Earth observation technology. So this is the first time where I started going into the space domain. So I know this is turning into a monologue, so I hope you don't mind.
No, it's very interesting,
It's
to be
always great
honest.
to hear. Yeah.
Okay, super. So basically, we started looking for new technologies that would allow us to make analysis of the city as a whole, and to understand the impact and the vulnerability of cities as a whole to extreme heat events and other climate change impacts as well. And this is when we came across space data. So most countries have, well, no, I won't say most countries have space agencies, but we know the US has it. NASA is very popular. The European Space Agency is the European version of that. We have ISRO in India and stuff. And they all have released their satellites out there, which are constantly monitoring the Earth and gathering a lot of data.
Right.
What a lot of people don't know is that this data can actually be processed and analyzed, actually acquired, processed, and analyzed freely. They're open source data. At least part of it is open source data. So NASA gives has its Landsat series, which provides wonderful amount of archive data, historic data, all the way on monitoring the climate, especially extreme heat. In Europe, you have the Sentinel data with the European Space Agency and the Copernicus service. So I started exploring all of that, and I started working on how to create a service for using all this data, along with various other different data that are already available out there. And we basically created the a new service, product/service called the Urban Heat Vulnerability Map, which is a map which takes into account a lot of different information to create an indicator called the Urban Heat Vulnerability Index, which we created, which is basically an indicator to show which parts of cities are most vulnerable to extreme heat based on thermal imagery, based on population density, based on level of greenery and moisture, etc. All of these factors taken into account. So it took us a while. We even published a few papers to get it validated by the scientific community, and we made it into a product. And what it does is it helps cities to understand which parts of cities are most vulnerable, and then we can bring our other original service, that is the simulations, into that. So like this is the objective behind it. But to be honest, I didn't really think much of it at that time, because again, without any experience of it, building a product itself, I just happened to be very lucky to have to stumble upon this new technology. Then we started presenting it to cities with very little expectations, and somehow the cities definitely took it quite well. We reached out to the city of Vienna, which is very close to Prague and also one of the most livable places in the planet according to rankings. They took they were very enthusiastic about our product. They definitely really took off with it, and they became our first clients, and then that was followed up by the city of Prague, and then several other clients followed after that, both in public and private sectors. So this was basically the journey of how we tried to reach to our customers and understand their pain points, and then try to bring them to our solution through developing another product, which happened to be the side product altogether. So sometimes you have to do that, so that was basically overall our journey, and we're still at it. We're still doing the same thing, and doing new things as well.
Awesome.
So yeah.
No, pretty interesting. Yeah. So you want to say something?
No, I think Santhu will also agree with me on this. So like in my previous company, and I think Santhu also worked for cities, right? So cities are very, resisting to, changes, right? To taking any new, vendors, because they always have their own pre-approved, vendor list and all that. And they always try to, put tenders and to get those pre-qualified ones, right? So it's I can understand how hard it is to, convince cities and towns here also to get a new client. So that is, I think, one of the greatest feat I think you guys achieved, and getting into different products and kind of tweaking the product so that it's useful for you, basically useful for your clients. So I think that's a great journey. Santa, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it was like a pretty interesting, as you said, you got your first client at the city of Vienna, which is the most livable city on the planet Earth, right? So to get that as a first client, I think that itself is a big feat. And then, as you said it, and you tweaked the product, as so mentioned, because the one original service that you guys were offering, it was not working, it was not getting accepted. So you found a way to kind of build another product, and then you kind of could serve the original product as well, right? So that was a pretty interesting journey. And also, let's move forward. We got that you got the base right, you got the base setup right. As we know, you talked about that you had two verticals in the business. First you started this original business, so how did you grow two verticals in the business?
Yeah, so the second vertical I think that you are mentioning is basically our association with the space industry, if I'm correct. And basically we got into that because, well, as I mentioned before, we got into that because we wanted to look for ways to help cities to reach our product. But to be honest, I was quite ignorant about this whole sector. So I was exploring this and I realized uh, I mean, I think luck would have a lot to do with that. It was a very situational thing, because right now in the EU, the Copernicus program, they have spent a lot of money on building these high-tech satellites and providing the service for free with public money, of course. And they provide a wonderful amount of data, but obviously when you provide it for free, it's very difficult for them to get back the money in that sense. So they're like actively helping a lot of startups like ours to adapt their business models or even their products to use space data or data from space. And it's always very exciting to say that you're part of the space industry, because everybody likes that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely there. But this is a less I would say, even then, this is a lesser interesting part of the space sector, because everybody thinks space means you're going out there and doing something crazy, but with the whole Elon Musk thing. But yeah, like the other side of the space is the downstream, so where you're getting the data from. So we started like reaching out, and I actually went across various different places in Europe to really get engaged in the space sector. And then I started thinking like, okay, I need to know how to get much support from this, because I work with the public sector, and I've already learned that if you work with the public sector as a contractor, then you really need to have a good track record, because they look at that.
Right.
If you want to get a client, they look at that. Whether you're doing tender or not, they will still look at that, okay? Because they have to answer to the people. And for that, you need the credibility, and the credibility comes from a lot of endorsements from other public sectors, including the space industry, like the European Space Agency, for example. So having that stamp on our product would definitely help. So we were already using the data, so we were reaching out and doing a lot of research work on that, and then it turns out that there's an entire community in Europe where for space startups, they're all doing very similar things. So started engaging with that, exploring more of that, learned a lot about the financial and the investment opportunities, and through that we started developing or even evolving our product into newer features, in like new features into our products, new modules, etc. And all of that is super exciting. So right now we are working on developing an API, which is like it's something that I won't say is a third vertical, but it's something that we are trying to evolve our original urban heat vulnerability map that I mentioned into something new, into something new on that, because we also recognize and probably this will be the third vertical actually that we would go into, is like, this is the age of smart cities with the huge amount of big data and artificial intelligence coming up. Cities are now going to take advantage of that. They are already taking advantage of that. And we want to be the provider of environmental data, especially with extreme heat or climate change and stuff into it. So the best way to do that is to provide them with data, and the best way to provide data for developers of smart city, along with platforms and stuff, is through APIs. So we're developing that, and I made a proposal to develop an API service which is based on our urban heat vulnerability map. That was, I think, 2 years ago, to ESA, to the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center, and they accepted. And basically, the last year was our first year of incubation, and this is the second half of incubation. So we're still at it. We're still working on developing this technology, and altogether, like while we're in the urban environmental side, the simulations in the urban environmental side, we definitely got a lot of exposure in the space sector, and we're now going into the smart city sector, all three different sectors altogether. So well, we're just basically going with the flow. So like I said, this is why it's very situational. So it's like we see that opportunities are there. We see that we can provide values into it. We have to put in the time. It's not like, okay, we go where we go. Like we have to give in the time and the effort and the knowledge. We have to gain the knowledge for all this and learn constantly in order to, get into this market, and then finally find clients, and which I need not say is very difficult altogether, especially if it's in the public sector. Like it's just very time consuming for
Yeah.
that. But there's pleasure into that,
Definitely.
So,
And yeah, awesome journey. And and I think that's super important, right? Identifying the problem. I think that's
mhm.
70-80% of the work, right? And then
Yeah.
finding solutions for it. So I think, yeah, that's an awesome job you guys are doing. And we didn't know about the third vertical, so all the best for that. And
Well, it's fair to say we came to know about it last year, so we're discovering new ones as well. But yeah, like you said, like we should be working on finding solutions to problems that exist. That's how value is built. So that's
yeah, that's great. So Shagnik, like in general, for the the overall perspective. So what do you think are the pros and cons of being a co-founder of a startup, especially in a like a foreign country, right?
hmm
And if you can say a few challenging moments and a few exciting moments in that journey, you can share with us.
Well, plenty of both actually. Yeah, well, there's a lot of, I mean, with everything that's happening now across the world, in the US as well as in India, with this very powerful startup market that's coming up, I think there's a lot of romance out there with the idea of making a startup, which is really cool actually. But there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. And if you want to start and have a startup, you definitely have to be very persistent, and you're going to fail in the beginning, and you have to keep moving forward from there. It's very, very important. If you are thinking that, okay, we're going to like start making a lot of money with starting a company, it's probably not going to work that way. But I think most of us know that. I mean, most of people know that or should know that. As for the challenges of being in a startup, well, I think first is the risk factor, like of whether your startup is going to run, because you're running against money and time. Money, so like I said, we were self-funded, so we had that, but there's only so far we could go with that. And of course, time, if you're spending like 2 to 3 years without much to show for it, then definitely you have to start rethinking a lot of things, whether it be it your approaches or be it your strategies, etc. So a lot of questions come up. So dealing with those questions can be a little bit daunting. But like I said, like you have to be persistent. You have to figure out how to motivate yourself, and the motivation should come from the inside. Like for me, I was really interested to work on the urban environmental sector, and this was an opportunity for me to really like apply what I've learned in school, which I absolutely loved, uh, to do something actionable in real life. So this is very rare. So I was like, okay, I really want to do this. I want to make sure this goes through. So that's kind of my reason for keep pushing. And I believed, like, yeah, I believe that we would get there. It's just like a lot of challenges that are coming up, but we will learn. And like we would grow. Uh, I would say like that would be a major factor, because in the beginning, as we are joining this was my first job. This is still my first job. So uh, in the beginning, you are open to learn, and that is a key element to it. After some time with the experience, it gets a little bit more difficult. But at that time, because you're completely fresh, you would be open to learn. So we definitely learned a lot from the mistakes. So and that kept me going as well. Um, that was more on the personal side. But if I were to go in general, one of the in Europe, at least, the language barrier, as you mentioned, is definitely there. So again, for me, luckily, the founder, he's Czech, so he spoke Czech, and he already knows how to do a lot of administrative work. But even then, for me, as a foreigner, as an immigrant, a lot of document like paperwork, visas, residence permits, these are all very tricky, and startups have limited capacity to take care of that. In that sense, it's a lot easier to go into a big company and then like they have an entire structure for stuff like this and they can help you out with that. But when it comes to small companies, you literally have to figure everything out on your own. I had to figure out like everything on my own, like how to get my residence permit, everything on my own, which is very difficult. Here, it's like in Europe, you have to do it in the local languages. You can hire some people, but then you're spending money on that. I think this is probably an advantage that you would have on in America or in the UK. Like, okay, at least that barrier is not there. The administrative side is just crazy everywhere, pretty much. Apart from that, I think setting up the company, there's a lot of there's an extra layer of administration that you have to do in order to start a limited liability corporation and figure out the details and the accounting, taxes, etc. on that. So those are definitely things that are really boring for people who are in the science side and science and the engineering side. We just want to focus on the the innovation and the product and stuff. But yeah, no, you have to deal with stuff like this. You need to know these numbers. You need to know all the administrative work. That was definitely a challenge. Like I would say in the beginning, my first year, we had the funding, but like for me, getting the visas and the residence permit in a country where I don't know the language. Or even the language for it, the structure of the administration processes and stuff, that was crazy out here. So but yeah, like that was definitely that would be one of the biggest challenges. And the final challenge, well, I won't say the final, but the one that I would like to mention here would be getting the clients. You need to when you would immediately get into very high positions if you're a co-founder, of course, but then you need to back that up with a lot of your own experiences. And in the beginning, I had none, so I really had to figure out how to market myself and also the company to get the attention of clients. I won't even say get clients, get their attention simply for that. And that can be that was a learning process altogether because I never learned how to do business before. So and as a founder of a company, you definitely need to know. And if you're a tech person, we have a tendency to really talk technical. We get technical very fast, like we start talking about all these and we take great pride. Like one of the cool things about being an engineer is that we take a lot of pride in being technical, and that often doesn't go very well for people who are non-technical. They're like, oh man, let's get away from him. He's going to start talking numbers. You have to censor yourself on that, and believe me, that's very difficult for an engineer. It's like holding back, like you're a leash dog, like you really want to get there but you can't. And it's very important that you control yourself on that, because then otherwise you're just chasing people away.
Very true.
So know what to say, censor yourself if you need to, at least in the beginning, and then after that you can get into the details. Know what to say to who you're talking to, and this is learning. This doesn't come very automatically. So this is also, I would say, a challenge if you're starting a company. This is more for tech people rather than the science people and stuff. Like this is why a lot of science-based companies don't work, because they don't know what to say to whom to say. Like it's just the way it is.
Great.
So
learnings.
yeah, I think that's pretty much all I would say before it turns into another monologue. So yeah.
Sure. No. That you are giving some great insight on entrepreneurship, on like civil engineering consulting firms. That I think your experience will definitely help a lot of people today who are listening to this podcast, who have in mind they want to do something like that in future, or at least they want to know how it works, right? So that is really some good insight that you're giving. And let's go to the next question. Let's say, what do you say in short? What do you think? What are the pros and cons of an entrepreneur? If you can address that.
Well, I've already mentioned part of it in
Yeah, you
the
said some
previous
of the
answers.
cons, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the key factor of being an entrepreneur is really to believe that your product is making a positive impact in the market, or to your customers. You need to make sure that what you're doing has an impact. Otherwise, it's really not. There's no point in doing that. And if you really believe in that, then you would be able to go, you will be able to do quite well on that. And the good thing, the good thing about being an entrepreneur, again, the romance comes quite well. Like, you're an entrepreneur, there's a pride to that, and people do look at you like people, especially who know that, who know how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, definitely have some respect for you on that, and you can really build upon that. The other thing is that you have your own freedom, for sure. Yeah, in the sense that you have the freedom of working, which can be a challenge in itself. Okay, in the beginning, in the beginning of this is actually quite important. In the beginning, when I joined ECOTEN Urban Comfort, we had no mentors. Our founder had also limited experience in this. I mean, he had his other company that was working, but there's very little he can translate from that company to this one. So we all were kind of really like going in on the blind, you know. So the mentorship was definitely something that we were lacking, and that definitely didn't help too much. But then there was an advantage to that. Like, you have to like discipline yourself to learn on your own, which for me works very well. I mean, I prefer to learn on my own rather than go into a class and stuff. But that for me was fun. So I definitely, that for me, that's a pro, because I love learning on my own, and entrepreneurs by default have to do that. They absolutely have to do that. So if you want to like go on your own way and be your own boss and make decisions, and provided that you're willing to take responsibility for your decisions, then entrepreneurship would really work well for you and stuff. But then again, you have to be on the grind on that. So and for me, and of course, the exposure you get as an entrepreneur is definitely something else, very different from that you would get from an employee, because you get to go to all these different events and present yourself, sometimes even give presentations, and like go out there and talk to, you get to talk to a lot of people. Yeah, that's definitely there. You get to talk to a lot of people, so therefore you need to know how to talk to people, and you actually get to hear a lot of, like, you have the opportunity to absorb a lot of experiences from other people who have been doing this a lot, and basically absorb their wisdom, and that is really, really cool. And like, if you consider in terms of work experience, the amount of work experience that you gain while doing it is, I think, like, it cannot be compared. Like, it's definitely a big plus. You are really going from the scratch ground level to going up there. It's definitely out there. Like, it's definitely a fantastic experience altogether. So yeah, you have to really love that. So if you're the type of person who likes to do things on their own way and likes to get stuff done in that way, and also, like, well, fair to say, like to boss around a little bit. Some of us actually enjoy that. Like, provided with all the you have all the respect for your team and stuff, and you really like to lead, you really like to take decisions and stuff, then this is definitely something that you would enjoy. So yeah, I would definitely go for that.
Awesome.
Wow, I think that's one of the biggest pros, as as you mentioned, right?
You're a free bird in that sense, like, but like, again, like, you are also responsible for what's happening. So
Exactly.
so yeah, if you're willing to take that, yeah, you're free. You enjoy your freedom.
Yeah, you're like presenting your idea, but at the same time you have to know how to convince people, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's I think something that you got from your global experience, right? Living at
Yeah.
all different parts of the world, so anybody from anywhere, how to convince them, right? How to talk to them.
Well, frankly speaking, even I had challenges on that. I also thought that way, like, okay, so since I grew up in this, it definitely helped me. There's no doubt about it. But I definitely underestimated the requirements for this job on that, and I really had to. I remember I had some mentors about this as well, like, who were telling me, okay, this is how you should talk to people. This is what you should say. This is how you should pitch. This is what you should not say,
Yeah.
etc. So I really thought that, okay, me being this, extrovert and who loves to talk and stuff would help. But it does help. But, like, definitely there is a lot more to that.
Exactly. And
But that's part of the fun.
yeah, and at some point, like censoring yourself, right? Because as you said, we tend to go into all details and everything, but to the general public, you have to be, very, focused on the point, right? Not go into numbers. This is
Yeah.
the input, this is the output, this is what we are doing, right? So basically,
Yeah.
your 3 years work summed up in 2 minutes, right? So basically, that's
Yeah.
what you need to do, and that's what you need to be good at, right, in order to present, right? So that's
And this is also not just for entrepreneurs. I think it applies to anybody who's doing
anybody.
an
Yeah,
engineer. Anybody,
exactly,
yeah, literally anybody. I think this
exactly.
is one of the problems that we're having, is that more technical and scientific people are not able to communicate their work to the
Yeah,
general people. And you saw what happened with COVID and stuff.
exactly.
There's a
Yeah,
chaos with the information. But yeah, that's how it is.
exactly.
Very important.
I think a very important good quote that Warren Buffett said here, that you can increase your worth by 50% instantly if you know how to speak well and write well. So the
Exactly.
first, that I
Yeah,
mean, if you want to just increase your worth, do these two things.
yeah,
Exactly.
very valuable skills on that.
Yeah, yeah. And as you said, it applies everywhere, right? Like even, while you are presenting in conferences, like technical conferences, we try to make sure that it's not, whatever thing we're presenting, it's not specific to civil engineers, right? Any general
Hmm.
public should be able to understand what we are doing. So censoring ourselves and not going into very detail and just focusing on the global thing that we are trying to solve out of that research. Even, like company technical reports, we try to write it in such a way that it is
Hmm.
clear to everyone, right? Not necessarily a civil engineer has to understand every
Yeah.
acronym, and we tend to use acronym a lot, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
that's a lot of the things, and that is true for every profession, right? Whether you be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur or working in any company, or even in like academia as well. More so in academia, I would say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's some great insights that you gave us today, Sagnik. Just in line of that, I know you covered the how you started your own company, but basically, if you can give some advice to some new graduates, or who are still pursuing their undergrad or their masters, and who wants at some point to start their own consulting company or start their own business. So what would be your tips to them, right? What would be your suggestion, and how can they work towards that goal?
Okay. Yeah, sure. I would be happy to share my thoughts on that. But before I do, I should let the viewers know that these advices are coming from somebody who ended up here by accident, as in this whole, but nevertheless, I definitely can share a lot on that. So, if you're planning to start a company, first of all, if you're planning to start a startup, then the way I see a startup is that you're definitely putting something like providing something new that has not been provided in some capacity. Okay, so if you're just opening a normal civil engineering design firm or something like that, which is something that most companies do, I wouldn't really call that a startup. You're starting a new company for sure, but it's not a startup. So there are two different things on that. Okay, so I will focus right now on the advice for the startup. So if you have something of a or some idea or some product that you think can do good for the world, or the market, or I would say the market, but the world, then I would give you some tips on that. So if you're a student, the good thing is that if that you are in you're part of a university that's I would even say a safe space for doing experiments or even making mistakes. So if you can manage your studies and think about this idea on the side, fantastic. I know that I wasn't like that kind of a student, so I certainly wouldn't do that. But I know that there are a lot of schools where they encourage you to do that, and I personally think that's a really good thing. So whatever facilities your schools can provide you with this, definitely take advantage of it. Schools, universities, they provide a lot of resources, and they provide, like I say, they provide you credibility. Having
Yeah,
having attached to that, definitely really good. The second is to make sure you do your research well, and this is very country specific. Starting a company in any country has its own set of challenges for that country, with respect to that country. So knowing about what are the options that you have, like what type of limited liability corporation you want to start off with, like have a plan for that, and know what are the benefits for starting up these things, because this is very important. Do you want to be a sole proprietary unit? You can do that. That's often a system where a lot of people take advantage of, especially if you're the sole founder of the company. It's a simple way. Then if you want to start, or if you want to start an LLC, know the taxes that you're paying. Okay, like know how much taxes you need to pay. My advice to that: get a great accountant. Accountants really help in this stage, like really they provide you with so much value. It is incredible. You will worship your accountant at some point. Or also like you need to get a lawyer as well, especially in, I think when it comes to civil engineering, where there's a lot of regulations and stuff.
Exactly.
It's very regulatory stuff. Know the laws of that country, and the laws, you would be surprised, they change a lot from one country to another. Even within Europe, for example, they change a lot. And I know in the United States they changed from state to state, and the taxes you pay are different from state to state, so it's even crazier on that. So research, like know exactly, know as much as you can, consult with people, like don't hesitate to reach out to people, like you have nothing to lose. People are often nervous. Oh, I'm talking to this person, that person. It doesn't really matter. You have something. Remember that you have something to provide. You're trying to do something, and that's outside the box. So like you could reach out to people, and if anything, they will just they say, okay, I'm sorry, I cannot provide you with this, or they'll just get you away from them at some point. But like you still lose nothing, like
Exactly.
you really don't. So definitely reach out, get the information that you want, get a lawyer, an accountant, a good one too, somebody you could trust. Then after that, get for technical people especially, get somebody, like it would be really good to get somebody who's on the business development side, somebody who's specialized on that, because otherwise you're just going to be wasting a lot of your own time. Well, okay, I won't say wasting time, because I didn't have a business developer in the beginning, but like you would be saving a lot of time in the business development side, and time is very essential in this, especially in the early stage. So if you could find somebody, if you're a student of engineering, then try to look for somebody who's in the business development, like MBA or something like that, a student on that, and you can team up and let that person deal with this, and they will benefit from this, and you will benefit from the technical side. You will have a lot more space in the technical side to develop, and that would improve your efficiency. Apart from that, I think I would just want to mention here, not too much in details, if you have like this is for people who have a product that is unique. Make sure you know your IP, intellectual property. Okay, it's very, very important. You don't want to lose out on this. Okay,
Exactly.
it will. I cannot stress how important that is. And so for that, you need to know if you need a patent or not. Okay, if you need to, what are the steps and the procedures to get those patents? Definitely do that. Okay, and having done all that, the other thing would be to like the most important thing is funding. Okay, again, we are lucky to have our own funding for that, but I know most entrepreneurs don't have this luxury. So know that there are various different types of fundings you can get. Self is one. If you could fund yourself from your own savings, fantastic. You're already an advantage, but like you said, very hard. The other is that you can try to get your first client. That again is very hard. So, but some people might manage to do that. Like if you're working on the company during your university time, you don't need to fund a lot, but then you're looking for companies that if you might be at the right place, the right time, you might go to an expo or something like that, and you might even land a client. If you're really good at this if you're natural in entrepreneurship, you would land a client, then you can get the funding from there, but that's very difficult. The other is to get an investor, and I would just say, like, this is the most common way, specifically in the US. I think most companies start with the investor, in Europe too, but it's a little different scene out here. But investors, you have to be very careful. Okay, like you really have to know the value of your company, and know do a proper evaluation of your product. How market value and everything. Know your market, and also be careful with investors, because again, it's always tricky when it comes to like making the right match. Remember, your investor is basically he's investing his money, but he may or may not do a lot, but he has to support you. But he's going to be your teammate. He's going to be the person you'll be working with. So a lot of compatibility is there. I'm not dissing investors. I know there are good ones out there. So, but like it's important that you have the right compatibility with the investor. The same goes for investors. Like they are also looking for the same. They want to know if they want to work with you or not. So. And of course, like know what is good for you in terms of sharing, giving shares and everything. Okay, it's very, very important. A lot of companies lose on this part. I think there are many good examples like Apple and stuff,
Right.
which have gone through this. And the other is public funding. You can also get public funding in case, I think, for consulting companies and stuff. If you're doing part of some research, if you do some research and development activities, you might even get funding from universities to kind of like co-found the company together, which I know at least in Europe a lot of people do. And I think it's a good way. Like then you have that background with the university. You have the connection with the university in terms of research and development, and that gives you already a good credibility to get the clients and stuff. And then you get the funding as well. Of course, getting the funding is not always that easy, but yeah, like this is a really good way. I know a lot of people personally who have gone through this way, and they've benefited from this. Being connected with the university. So yeah, these would be the funding side. And probably one more thing I would like to share, and I promise this is the final one, is for those people who don't have the background in business development and you're still going to go ahead with it anyways, I would recommend you explore these things called accelerators or incubators. Okay, starting with accelerators, because accelerators are basically schools. I would say, like the best way to explain it is like there's schools for startups to kind of grow into business. So they provide you with a lot of resources, sometimes financial, most of the time not, on how to develop your business plan. Yeah, that's okay. I've completely forgot about that. Have a business plan. It really helps to have like a structured document with all the different details of your business, how you forecast yourself. They will use a lot of accelerators help you to make that. They will provide you with mentorship and a lot of advices, so you can benefit from the mistakes that other people have made, and that can give you a huge advantage. It will also give you a market review. They will also teach you how to do a market review, market analysis, and all that. And like basically, like they'll school you to how to do business. And I think for me personally, this has been a huge advantage. I've been part of many accelerators, had many mentors, and with whom I have developed good relations with and stuff. And same in incubators, same thing. It's been invaluable. Their support has been invaluable to my experience entirely. So, and the coolest thing is that often you don't need to pay anything for that. These informations are available for free, provided you get accepted to these accelerators. So I cannot think of a better way to learn how to do business than this. Again, be careful which accelerator you're going into. Not all accelerators provide you with what you want. There's a compatibility to it, but for those who are students, I think definitely go for it. If you can manage to spend some time with on this, and if you're really invested on this, then definitely I would recommend accelerators. Here in Europe, there are many public accelerators that would take no equity from you and provide you with good schooling, I would say, on that. Many from the EU level. I don't know. I think the most popular accelerator in the world, I would say an incubator, is the Y Combinator in the US. Silicon Valley has plenty of that and all that. But for civil engineering, I don't know too much about what's going on there. But here in Europe, there are plenty of accelerators who are working on climate and clean tech and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely try for that, and that really gets you. And also, it gets you like a lot of connections and contacts.
Definitely.
Provides a good good access to a lot of resources. So, I would say that would be my final and most important advice for upcoming
Oh,
entrepreneurs.
great answers that you give, and thank you so much, because I think the viewers, the students, they can get a lot of insight for all the answers that you give, because you kind of covered everything, like a comprehensive view you gave. It's like a mini course on entrepreneurship, like a startup. And you also said, I mean, very honest, because it's like, because to me, I really appreciate the time that you are spending here, and you kind of, because Soham and I both are working professionals, right? We
Mhm.
did not have this experience, so it's like a great journey that you shared today, like, and
Yeah.
exactly the steps that you need to follow, how to get funding, how to get a lawyer, an accountant, and like accelerator programs, and to
Yeah.
get a business side. somebody from the business side who can
Hmm.
manage and expand your business, right? So it's like an excellent job. You covered and touched all the points. I am sure the people who really want to start a business or are looking at it, at least they will get immense benefit out of your real journey. Okay,
Definitely,
so yeah,
definitely.
so
Yeah, it's
thank
my
you.
pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Oh,
one like follow up question on that, Sagnik. So as you said, the government funding. I was also amazed to see how much government funds like are like available for startups,
Hmm.
especially those who are working on certain fields, right? And how much tax rebates are there. So I was like in my previous companies, I was also able to see a little bit of the business side of things, and I
Hmm.
was able to see how companies does that, invest in research, and lot of tax benefits there as well. So
Yep.
definitely that point I would like to resonate, exploring different funding options, right? Especially governments, especially working with universities, sometimes it helps a lot, right?
This is why
The
you need the accountant. They know how to
Yeah,
do stuff like
exactly,
this. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
And the question that I had for you, like about the patents, right? I know patents are very country specific, right? So sometimes you need to know which countries you want to work, like kind of forecast the future. Like, am I correct, or is it not like that?
Well, okay, so I wouldn't. So I haven't done any of the patent things
Okay,
because I didn't need to for my service because most of mine was open source, and we are basically we want to project ourselves more as data providers and consultants. So we don't have something unique yet on that. But
okay,
that being said, I might have to do this in the future. I do know a lot of people who have who needed to do that. The only advice I would give on that is again like get an IP. Advocate or a lawyer on
yeah,
that. Like definitely consult. It's worth the money because
exactly,
then otherwise, like I know how critical it is to get these patents before starting the business because you need to protect your technology. It's your baby. You need to protect your baby, and patent is the only way to do that. So first thing on that, I would say is like to know what kind of patents you would need. Like I said, varies from country to country, and I can tell you like what one patent can be accepted in one country, it might not be accepted in other country in the same way. So again, know that if you're trying to set up a company in Europe or the US and you're trying to do business in China, understand the IP laws of that country,
yeah,
because there might be a lot of problems, and they might like there are a lot of thefts in this. I'm not going to point out what here and there, but that can happen anywhere. And the last thing you want is a replica of your unique solution somewhere else competing with you on this, like and that's being legally entitled to do so. That's just not something you want.
definitely,
So definitely explore. If your main market for your service is your home country, or the country that you're staying in, know the patents of that. And if you are expanding to other countries, know the IP of that. And there are many services on this, so you're not like you're not in an island. You're not alone on this. Okay, you can find a lot of these IP. This is a big deal right now, so you will find IP advocates, and sometimes you might even get consultation for free on this. Like if it's like say for example in Europe, in the EU, they have a lot of resources on this that you can find out on your own, and even consult with people on your own on that. So take advantage of that. But like yeah, definitely stress on it. So I think that I hope that answers your
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
answers. So yeah, do your research, right? That's
Yeah.
super
Do
important.
your That's the advantage that you will have. Like if you the more better research you are, the smoother your ride would be.
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
no, great day, Sagnik. Thank you so much. I think yeah, Sagnik also agreed to do another podcast with us,
Mhm.
like which is on how to do a MS in France, and like and get some like job opportunities, what are the tuition fees, all those things. So yeah, we look forward to that meeting, that podcast as well, because it was really a pleasure to be with us today. I mean, we really appreciate it. Soham, if you want to add something.
Yeah, and I'm sure your success story will motivate and inspire a lot of people, and to take up this entrepreneurship journey, because I know like a lot of people think about it, but it's very hard to take that leap forward. So and find that confidence. I'm sure this interaction would help some people to take that leap out, right? and also give a lot of clarity, on the experience of, a founder, and how to start a, get a startup founded, right? So that's great, and I also look forward to welcoming you in our future podcast. So yeah, great having you here, Sagnik, and thank you so much
It's my
for your
pleasure.
time. Yeah.
And for our viewers, if you like this video, we are making the contents that we are making, please like and subscribe to our channel, like and share this video to other people who actually need it, right? Because I'm sure many people will get a lot of benefit out of it. And again, thank you, Sagnik, for being with us. It was really a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
Thanks. Okay. Okay, bye bye.
Bye.